I just want to first welcome each and every one of you to this month's Accelerate Series webinar. And for those of you that are not familiar, this is a webinar series I host every single month. Typically, it's every third Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern, with the exception of some months where we may have like 5 Thursdays in a month. We might move it to the 4th Thursday of the month, depending on holidays and things like that. But I'm really excited for you to join us here today, where our topic for this month is going to be focusing on uncovering opportunities with asset map tools. And there's going to be several tools that we're going to focus on today. So let's get started. If you have questions throughout today's program, please use the chat feature in Zoom and or the Q&A option. Either one is perfectly fine. I will make sure that your questions get answered. So let's go ahead and begin. Okay. Here we go. So first and foremost, I want to take a second to introduce myself. If I have not had the pleasure of working with you yet, or perhaps this is your first time tuning in to my Accelerate Series webinar, my name is LiaJean McHenry. You can call me LiaJean, Leah, or LJ. All three are acceptable. I do not have a preference, truly. I am Asset Map's Senior Training Manager, so I handle a lot of our office onboarding. I build a lot of learning and development content. I host a lot of webinars, live in-depth training options and things like that. So I'm excited to be here with you and share with you the power of what our platform can do. Today's agenda is all about uncovering opportunities using Asset Map's tools. So we're going to start by talking about some ways that you can potentially mine through your household index. This is not something that we're always able to train to initially when you become onboarded onto our platform. So I'm really excited to show some of y'all how you can really leverage the household index list through columns, through filters. You can even save them. So that's where we're going to start. Then I want to show you how you can use signals and target maps to help you uncover opportunities as well. And I'm also going to highlight how stencils in part are also another interesting concept to help you potentially uncover opportunities. All throughout today's training, I will be highlighting where you can find continued support and resources. Of course, you can always reach out to our team. Don't forget that we're here to support you. I think that most of you on today's call have likely reached out to our support team before. I hope that you had a wonderful experience, because all of us on our team genuinely do care about you and we want you to be successful. So if you feel like you need continued training or you need more one-on-one support, lean on us. Please reach out and communicate that, and we'll be happy to do that for you. All throughout today's session, if you have questions, use the chat feature and or Q&A. And if applicable to the pertaining to the topic and for the group, we'll make sure to get all of them answered. Okay. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Where we're going to begin today is I want to talk about mining your book of business. Now, mining your book of business actually starts here within your household index list. If you're not familiar, as we add households into the platform, you can add households in 3 different ways: manually, through discovery, interview, and or integrations. It really doesn't matter how you get households added into the application, because once the households get added, they're going to flow through here to your household index list. This will be your full list of households added into the application. Now, you may or may not have noticed that when you click into your household index list, it does sort your households' names by alphabetical, okay? In addition, you can click on the name if you wanted to sort it Z to A versus A to Z. You just simply click on the top of the column and it'll flip the switch there for you, okay? In addition, you're gonna have some additional columns along the top. These show data entry insights for these households at this given time. And while these particular columns along the top are really valuable, like last time you modified that particular household, what the status of the household is this a client? Is it a prospect? Is it a sample account that you added into the application? Is it a stencil that you built? Other things like what percentage of wallet share, right? Overall number of members in that household, number of financials, number of target maps. However, you can change the columns along the top. There's actually a very detailed list of columns that you can pick and choose from. So you can unselect some of the ones that are already there, and you can pick and choose from a variety of these other ones that you see. So you could do something like, let me see net worth against assets under management. So you can come into the column list and you'll have to scroll to find the ones that you're looking for, right? So I could come in here and I could say, you know what, I want to see specifically a dependent account. Okay, dependent count, meaning how many dependents do each of these households have. I could also come in here and say, you know what, I want to see total income earned amount, right? That might be interesting to me. In addition, next to income earned amount, I might want to see some other things here like insurance life amount, right? Because if I can see that the life insurance looks low next to the total income earned, that right there could potentially be a potential insurance opportunity and or other products and things that are out there. So please just know that you can pick and choose between the columns along the top. Just know that if I was to click off to the side here and come back into the household index list, you'll notice that the 2 additional columns are still going to be present here. Okay, so they'll be added there. And if I wanted to deselect them, I'll select this drop down here. I would have to simply scroll down in this list and I'd uncheck them if I didn't want them to stay. Okay. In addition to the columns, we also have filters. Filters by design are to help you quickly mine through your book of business. Please turn your eyes to the bottom left-hand side of my screen. You're going to notice that I have 240 households added into the application. Well, let's say that I wanted to look for a loss of life opportunity. And maybe specifically for loss of life, I am looking for an insurance opportunity. Although many of us on this call know that when we go run a loss of life analysis, how we choose to fund that gap is up to you. In many cases, insurance and some other products might be the most cost effective, but it doesn't inherently mean that you're going to sell those people insurance, okay? But let's say that that's an opportunity I specifically am looking for. What I could do is I could actually use filters. I could click the filter dropdown. Maybe specifically, I want to start by saying earned income, okay? So if I just come in here and type in keyword income, I'll look for where it says income earned amount. Maybe I'm specifically looking for folks that have anywhere from $200,000 or more, so greater than or equal to $200,000 or more in earned income, okay? Another filter I want to apply, I want to look at life insurance. So I want to look at folks that have either greater than or equal to $200,000 or more earned income amount, but also have less than or equal to, let's say, $2 million in life insurance, right? So you can come in here and you're going to add that in. Now you come up with your own parameters. You don't have to follow mine. I'm not going to be offended if you don't like the filters I'm using, okay? But maybe this is what I'm specifically looking for. Households where their earned income is greater than or equal to 200,000, but their life insurance that they have is less than or equal to $2 million. In addition, I might want to look for households that have dependents, right? Because if you've got a lot of income and you have other dependents to take into consideration, right? So greater than or equal to at least one dependent. And maybe I also want to look for households that have liabilities, right? There's a liabilities of amount that, let's say, is either greater than or equal to, we'll say, $100,000, okay? So specifically what I'm looking for here are households that the members together, right, the primary client and spouse, have earned income greater than or equal to 200,000, insurance less than 2 million, a dependent count of 1 or more dependents, and a liabilities of amount of over $100,000. If I click apply filter, this list goes from 240 households down strategically to 7. So I might say, you know what, let me now layer in those additional columns that I had shown before. Like I want to see an earned income amount, okay, in this columns list. And again, I also want to see the life insurance amount. So if I had left those 2 columns, these filters help me narrow it down, and then very quickly I can see some comparison. Now, maybe I just happen to be meeting with these folks later this week. So I'm like, you know what, this could be an opportunity for me to like tee up a conversation so I can present this to them in that meeting. But before we get there, let's say that we love these filters that we found. You can actually save the filters and the columns that you have selected so that you can quickly flip back to those at a later date. In fact, I already did this earlier today, but I'm going to show you how to do it here. So I just added those 4 particular filters. By the way, you can click on any of the filters at the top. You can manipulate them if you want to adjust them. You can remove them if you want to remove one. You can add additional filters if you want to. But let's say I want to save this filter set so that I can quickly flip back to it 6 months from now if I want to. What I can do is I go over to the right, I click save, I click save as, because this is not something I've saved before, so I have to click save as. What I would then call this is I might call this, life insurance opportunity, okay? Or whatever the case is, life insurance. So you give it a name, you click save. Well, if I click back onto my homepage, come back into the household index list, it clears any filters along the top. However, the columns that have been selected will stay the same. But how do I refine those filter sets that I saved? I can come here to the layouts drop down on the upper left-hand side. In naming the layout very clearly, life insurance, I can click on that and it immediately reapplies those same 4 filters. Now, let's say 3 months from now, I'm using this filter set again, and I realize, you know what, I actually am always changing the liabilities amount to be like 80,000 instead. What you can do is you can click into the filter, adjust it like so. I could type in 80,000, click apply. And if I wanted to save this filter set so it follows this number moving forward, I click save, save. You're not saving as unless you want to save a new one. But if you're trying to save on top of the one that you already had created, you simply want to save that the liabilities will be greater than or equal to $80,000. You'd simply click save here. Okay, so I could click save. Now, again, if I go back to the default, which is no filters applied, and I flip back to my layout, reapply life insurance, you'll see that the liabilities amount now is going to reflect that $80,000 moving forward. Okay. You can create a multitude of filter and column sets and save them quickly. You'll notice a few examples that I have over here on the side. Maybe I'm looking for some long-term care candidates, right? I created a layout. This long-term care candidate has a couple filters. The first filter was income earned greater than $150,000. That the primary's age is 55 and above, right? Because traditionally, when we're thinking about long-term care, we're looking for folks that kind of fall into that pocket of 55 to 70. I know every financial professional is a little bit different in the age range that they follow, but that's just the example I provided here today. I also, in addition, want to see households that have a net worth less than $3 million and a daily long-term care dollar amount of $100 a day, okay? Or less than $100 a day. And obviously, I understand that long-term care does vary depending on different states. So you all may have different numbers that you want to put in here. That's perfectly fine. I just want to show you a couple examples. Okay. So if you were to create this filter set yourself, okay, watch. If I go back to default, all you have to do is start on the household index list. You're going to use your filter and you're going to look for things like income earned. Okay. You do income earned and you'd say, I want that to be greater than or greater than $150,000. In addition, I'm looking for folks that also have, let's say, a net worth, right? Search net worth like this, and you could say net worth less than $3 million. So you can add that in. So that's ultimately how you would add those, okay? You just look for those filters. So again, if you're looking for the long-term care, I'll reopen it here so you can see. If I click into any one of these are the filters that I used. Income earned greater than 150, primary age greater than 55, net worth less than 3 million, daily long-term care less than $100 a day. Okay. I am not going to tell you what to put in these fields. You have to pick them. That's part of you being the financial professional, but I'm simply guiding you that there are ways for you to leverage these particular filters. Okay. I might even want to say, you know what? I'm going to clear these filters out. Maybe I'm looking for prospect opportunities. Let me take a look at the full list of prospects that have been added into the application. This is where I can click filter. And the particular filter you're going to look for is status. If you type status, click on it, you could say is prospect, or you could say is not. Okay, so there's a couple options there. In this example, I want to see, okay, out of this 240 households I have in Asset Map, how many of them are marked as a prospect? I click apply filter. I go from 240 down here to the bottom left, you'll see 53 records where the status of those households are marked as a prospect. I might want to strategically click into each of those households, change the status of the folks that have come on board full-time as a client. And I might want to layer in some additional filters to look for prospects where there really could be some opportunities. And we want to use this filter as an option to start kind of like a re-engagement campaign. Right? Let me re-engage, reach out to some of these prospects that have kind of fallen off, right? And this is a great opportunity to do so. So hopefully you all can see the value of the household index list. It often gets overlooked, right? We're just so kind of ingrained in ourselves to always add the households, add the data, go run the analysis. But what we forget is as we add more and more households into the application, along with their additional information, you really can leverage your household index list to help you look for opportunities. Again, through the use of filters, and again, through the use of columns. And you can overlay and remove, and you can save these as layouts so that you can quickly flip back to them at future dates to continue looking for opportunities. So let's pivot into a household, okay? I went back to my life insurance particular filter that I was looking for, the filter set, I should say, where I'm saying, okay, I want to see households with an income earned amount that is greater than or equal to $200,000, life insurance that's less than or equal to $2 million, with at least one or more dependents, and liabilities greater than $80,000. Well, maybe specifically, I'm looking at these folks and I'm like, okay, listen, you've got $230,000 worth of income, but you got about $1.1 million in life insurance. That's pretty good, right? But that doesn't mean they're going to be that doesn't mean they're necessarily going to be 100% successful. This is a prospect, and it's actually a prospect I'm going to be meeting with later this week. So I could click into this household to drill down into their information a little bit deeper. So bear with me that uncovering opportunities could be utilizing multiple features with an asset map to truly back into your recommendation, to close the deal, to get new assets under management, etc. So I might have started at the household index list, applied some filters, changed some columns, looked for opportunities. And then out of that list, I might have strategically picked out the people I either have some good working relationships with. I need to enhance that relationship. I have an upcoming meeting. It's up to you. Now, these folks I'm going to be meeting with later this week. If I click on their map, you can see that I've added all the details that I know about them. And they have been really engaged with me. I sent them through the discovery process to get the household added. They did add quite a bit of information. We did have to manually add some additional pieces that they just didn't have statements for when they initially went through that. I did apply a stencil to kind of fill in some of the gaps, but this is the baseline. This is as much as I know about them. This is where I believe that they are today. Okay. That being said, some areas that can help us uncover opportunities are using analysis tools like Signals and target maps. If you're not familiar with Signals, Signals is a screening tool. What it does is it examines the household members, okay, primary client, spouse. It looks at their earned income. It looks at their assets. It looks at their insurances. And at the highest level, it just spits out, does it look like you could financially weather these events? Now, if you're wondering how Signals work, there is a predictive model that has been built into the back end that does have algorithms built off of industry standards. We don't share the math with you, though, and that's intentional. And here's why. Signals is to not dive into the math. Signals is to drive conversation. It's to allow you to pivot into target maps. Target maps are where we quantify, are people on track, yes or no? So Signals do run off of a color gradation system. Green indicating it looks like we're decently on track, yellow indicating things are not looking good, and red indicating so far it looks like things are not good at all. Listen, this is not a perfect solve though. But one thing I have to say to you as I train to this in this training, do not assume that just because something is green means that they are 100% successful. You would be misleading them, okay? So no matter what, the intention is that for a lot of you on this call, you are holistic financial advisors. You are going to do holistic planning. And so for many of you, especially those of you that are very experienced, which many of you are, you're likely already touching on all of these areas through your relationships. So guess what? The Signals probably for a lot of people, especially folks that you've had a relationship for a long time, it's simply going to back up everything you likely already know. Okay. At the end of the day, long-term care for a lot of people, if they have a ton of non-retirement assets, might be green. That doesn't mean that they would actually use those assets for long-term care. But if you got enough non-retirement assets that you could potentially self-fund a long-term care event, then yeah, we're going to show it as green. Guess what? Just because something's green doesn't mean we're going to be like, yep, you're okay. You can say, listen, I use a screening tool, right? How I like to position it is this. Every time we meet, we're going to start on your map. Your map is where we determine where you are today. If anything needs to be updated, adjusted, and or added, we're going to get that taken care of here. If everything is up to date, every time we're then going to move into your signals. This is a screening tool that I use. This simply is a light indicator to help me determine, are you on track if these unexpected life events take place? And I know these things are not fun to think about, nor are they super fun to talk about. But at the end of the day, I'm not here just to support you through your goals and tangible things that we're looking to achieve, right? Retirement, planning for your kids' education. I'm also here to support you and share with you if there's potentially some problems in other areas. I have to address it to you. And so, listen, you may see some things here that are in green. That means that we seem to be on a decent track, right? That we are progressing in a good manner. We'll run the numbers no matter what. But you may also see some things in yellow and red. And listen, that could be because we may potentially still be missing some information. You know, Eddie, I noticed you have a long-term care individual account. Katie, do you? Oh, you do. Okay, great. Well, listen, once we get that added in, your signal could very well update. But right now we're missing that. You know, the other thing to think about is you've got some group life through your employers. I'd be interested to know if you could reach out to your benefits person and find out if you have short or long-term disability through work. You think you do? Okay, great. That right there is missing information. We're going to want to get that. We can get it added in. Okay. So as you add information to households asset maps, their signals will update in real time. And you'll notice that long-term care here, I snoozed it. Okay. So when you're working with some clients that are a little bit younger, right? They're in their late 40s, early 50s, maybe you're not ready to have the long-term care conversation. This is a perfect example where no matter how young people are, you should still say, no matter what, we're always going to take a look at where you are today. I'm going to use this screening tool to help me uncover if there's some potential areas we need to dive into deeper. Over the course of our relationship, we're going to cover every single one of these. Now, rest assured, some of these are red and yellow, and that could very well be because we're still missing some additional information from you. But we're going to run the numbers because we have to run numbers that are specific to you to truly know, are you on track? Now, long-term care, listen, I'm going to table that conversation from now. That's typically something we like to start once you start getting into your mid 50s. Okay. So for now, we're going to go ahead and we're going to snooze that indefinitely, and we will revisit that conversation later on. So for you all on today's training, you do have the ability to snooze certain signals if perhaps you want to table those conversations for a later date. Any of the signals you click into, you click on the details tab, it will tell you what that signal is based upon, and it will also give you some considerations to consider. Okay. When it comes to legal liability, because there is a question in the chat, most often legal liability is always going to remain red unless you do have an umbrella policy. If you want to learn more about the signals, you can always click on our chat bubble on the upper right hand side. That will allow you to open up our support options. This is where you can live chat in questions to our team. This is where you can email our team, but there's also this search for help bar. This is our knowledge base. This is where you can come and you can type in keywords like signals, and there's going to be additional resources available. Okay, you click on signals, you can come here and you can learn more about them. In addition, you can hop back out, come back in, and you can search other keywords. Like, for example, household index. Okay, so if I just type in household index, like so, you can type that in, and we have a really great support article, one that actually describes what each of the filters and columns represent, which I actually think is really helpful. So if you want to take notes today and you want to learn more about mining your book of business through the household index, check out this support article. Beyond that, if you have specific questions about any one of these signals, please reach out to our team. We'll be more than happy to talk to you about it. Because while we won't share directly the algorithm that's being used in the back end, we can certainly do our best to explain a little bit more about some of the specifics. Okay, so maybe I want to look at loss of life, because through my preliminary conversation with these folks, like, they told me that making sure that there's a plan in place if something happens to one of them is the most important thing, because they have 2 kids that are relying on them and an adult family member. Eddie's mom is starting to experience early signs of dementia, and she very much is going to be a part of their household permanently moving forward. And so there are concerns to make sure that there's a plan in place so that if one of them passes away, that they are in fact taken care of. And yes, they do have some insurance policies, but listen, the signal supports that potentially it may not be enough. And in addition to the dependents up at the top, they also have quite a bit of legal liability left. They still have to pay off $200,000 of debt to the home, have a little bit of credit card debt. So where do we go actually run the numbers to determine if there truly is an opportunity? That's where you're going to use target maps. This is where we can come in, we can run that loss of life. I'm only going to run it for one person today just because of the sake of time. But like, for example, if I run a loss of life for the primary client, in theory, you'd want to do it for both, right? Because the purpose would be to engage both members, but we're just going to do it for one today. Okay. Now here I'm going to share with you, when it comes to target maps, my hope is that everyone's run at least one target map before. If not, I highly suggest that you take advantage of our weekly target map trainings. Okay, I'm going to include those links in the follow-up to today's session. If you have not attended our weekly signals target map training, it's 60 minutes fully dedicated to signals and target maps and how they work. So I'm not going to teach you about the fundamentals of how a target map works today. That's not the purpose of this particular training. However, if you're somebody who's like, okay, now I want to learn more about the in-depth details and the math behind target maps, you're going to want to come to that training. And I will include those links in the follow-up email that I'll be sending out later today. But let's discuss target maps at a high level to at least get you all set up for success for those that maybe haven't had a lot of exposure. When you add a target map, they're all formatted the same. You're going to have a funding bar up top. The funding bar's color is associated with the type of target map that it is. This blue dot next to loss of life is because this is a loss of life target map. Okay, green bars are going to be retirement. Yellow is going to be education. You can see when I hop out a level, okay? Green, the yellow dots here, these are education funding target maps. If I was to run a retirement one really quickly, just so that you can see, I add in a retirement target map, and you're going to see in a matter of seconds. Again, I'm already going to have some output being populated. The funding bar is green up at the top. Now let's go back into the loss of life. Every target map is formatted the same. You got a funding bar up top. You have some parameters down below, and you're going to have 3 consecutive tabs. What you want, which is what are we solving for? What's the expense? In other words, what are we solving for this goal, or what are we solving for in the event that this need takes place? For loss of life, we're going to have lifestyle replacement expenses, okay? If you're someone who prefers human life evaluation, that's perfectly fine. You go ahead and remove these additional expenses and have your one line item. You can call it human life valuation. You put the dollar amount based off the calculator that you use, okay? It's up to you. Now, for loss of life specifically in our platform, we're solving for income replacement from when the person passes away today up until age 67. So assuming that he would have worked until 67, we factor in some transitional income. We want to pay off the debt obligations. We factor in $10,000 for final expenses. If they have dependents, we factor in education for both. Okay, $25,000 a year for 4 consecutive years from 18 till age 22. But this is $25,000 today, growing by a 5% COLA. Okay, so we are factoring that in. We also factor in things like emergency reserves. Here's the thing. When you use any one of our default target maps, there's going to be some preset assumptions in tab number 1, which is what are we solving for? What's the expense? You don't have to agree with all of them. You could say, you know what, I actually think this person would work until age 70. So I want to go ahead and switch the end age to 70. And I actually think $75,000 a year would be what I would want to solve for them. Fine. You go ahead and change this to 75, you change the end age, but I would remove this language because how these defaults are often calculated are off of a percentage of the person who's passing away, their annual income on the map, okay? So you can make those adjustments here. Now, the key thing to remember is that once you've established what we're solving for, what's the expense, please remember this is after-tax cash flow desired. Tab number 2 is fed directly from the asset map report. So all of the cash flow sources, the assets, and the insurance added on their map, okay, flow through here into the target map in tab number 2. As you update values in those instruments, they will flow through and update in tab number 2. Okay, scrolling down a little bit farther, this is where you're going to see that for this loss of life, the only assumption the platform makes is, hey, if this primary client passes away, we would enable the life insurance policies tied to that person. Now, you could come in here and you could check on other assets and cash flows that potentially could be used to help solve this gap of funding, but that is up to you, the professional. Okay, I'm not going to get into that today. Tab number 3 summarizes it all. We would need $1.6 million today, Eddie, if you passed away, in order to fund all of these expenses. So over here, okay, capital required is tab number 1. All the expenses are listed down below. Capital available on the right is tab number 2. This is going to list off those 2 insurance policies and what in total they're worth. So listen, if a loss of life happens and we're covering all these expenses, we would need $1.6 million today. We'd have $570,000 of that covered by your insurance payout, right? And we would want to invest that an average of 5% rate of return. And so if we could do that, well, then 1.6 netted against 570 gives us a deficit of about $1 million. Okay. If you're curious how this box works, this is used simultaneously in 2 distinct ways. Number 1, it's used as the discount rate to help us calculate present value. It's also used as the blended rate of return that's tied towards anything checked on in tab number 2. So here's how I like to train to the math. I like to turn this to 0 and I click off to the side so it can update. Okay. If this is set to 0 and you are in tab number 1, this will be the total cost of what these expenses would cost in total. Okay. This is like the future value amount of all of these expenses, things happening today, things happening in the future. Okay. $2 million. But that's assuming that your money does absolutely nothing for you. And the fact of the matter is, in tab number 2, we do have those 2 life insurance policies. And if we take the death benefit payout and we invest it, and let's say we can average a 5% rate of return, well, then guess what? You don't need $2 million up front today. You need 1.6. Why? Because if your money continues to do something for you, you would need less money up front today. So what does this mean? When we need 1.6, we have 570. Therefore, we have $1 million deficit. Okay. That's our gap. How we choose to fund that is up to you, the financial professional. Maybe I'm trying to sell some additional term insurance. Okay. Just as a light example, I'm not going to speak to specific products. I'm just going to make some things up because I don't want to get too in the weeds about this. Okay. I don't write insurance. So that's just a disclaimer for the group. So listen, we have $1 million need here. Okay. He has $570,000 worth of insurance currently. So I could say to him, listen, Eddie, if you pass away today and we're solving for all of these expenses, because I know taking care of your family and everything is the most important thing to you, right? We need 1.6. If we take your current insurance and we invest it at payout 5%, we're still short. Okay. We have about $1 million deficit, which means that your wife is going to have to come up with $1 million today, write us a check, and we would need to invest it at 5% average in order to fund this gap. Can she do that? No. Okay. Well, listen, if I look at the span of time before of income replacement, okay, if you pass away today at 55, and let's say you were going to work until 70, because that's ideally when you said you'd like to retire, right? That's 15 years of income replacement. So listen, if I put 15 here, okay, I'm going to put the 15 years of income replacement here so that I can show you this overarching deficit as a monthly amount. So listen, your wife needs to come up with $1 million today in order to self-fund these remaining expenses in the event that you pass, or she'd have to come up with $8,100 a month every month for the next 15 years. Do you think she'd be able to do that? Does she get a second job? Maybe we could downsize the home. Does she have family and friends that would be able to help her out financially? If not, like, this is where I might want to be prepared to share a recommendation. And I could say, listen, like, part of what I'd like to show you today is if you were to fill out an application, like, we could recommend some term insurance with a death benefit of $1 million. Let me show you what that would look like. Okay. Again, you'd come up with a recommendation prior to this meeting. Now, prior to this meeting, if I was going to present it, I would have ran the target map, I would have ran the math, and I would have figured out what my recommendation is going to be. If I wanted to add a proposed insurance policy, I actually have to add it here on the physical asset map report. Insurance is one of the few things in target maps where you have to add the proposed policy to their physical map. So what I could do in preparation before they come in for a meeting is I could right click my mouse. I could click create, add a new insurance asset. Let's just gonna say I'm gonna do some term life. Okay. You might say I would not recommend that to them. That's fine. That's why you're the expert. Okay. So I could call this proposed term life. I put the carrier and then I go ahead and put the benefit, which we're just going to say $1 million for the sake of this example today. Okay. So I create that. I always like to name proposed insurance policies very clearly on the map. This is also sometimes where I like to use the emoji feature. So it's a little bit of a hidden gem that people don't know about. let me just be very clear. Disclaimer, I'm not a part of your compliance department. So some of you that are tied to broker dealers or have compliance teams and or members and things like that, please just do your due diligence. If you feel like you can't use this, don't use it. Okay, but that's on you. You have to figure out what you're permitted to do. So what I could do next to proposed term life is I could right click my mouse. So in any reference name in AssetMap, you can right click your mouse and you can click emoji. Okay, don't get crazy with it. Like, be professional. I type in things like red circle, yellow circle, blue circle, question mark. Okay, so I might put like a yellow circle, and that is an indicator that I just added this here as a proposed placeholder, but I had to physically add it, right? So I could come in here, and if it's not showing the emoji, this is a perfect example where you could shorten the name like so that it would show on the tile. Okay, you click update, and once it saves, you could see this here. Okay, so then before they come in, I'm going to test to see the improvement, right? So I could go back into the target map. Notice that the loss of life target map, it hasn't changed. It's not going to, because they just added that new policy. And the policy was added after this target map was ran. So even though that policy does flow through and appear in tab number 2, it's not going to be automatically checked on. We can't make that assumption. But I could layer it in, okay? And I could see the impact of what that would do. It gets them 98% of the way there. So what I could do here is I could go ahead and uncheck this, okay? And we could have that conversation. So I'm going to uncheck this here. So let's do like a little live example of how we could potentially put all these things together. If I was going to actually meet with these people later today, I proactively would probably go ahead, right, and have multiple tabs of AssetMap open. So I like to have everything teed up so I can move left to right. So I might start here on the AssetMap report, to right click my mouse, click duplicate. Then I could tee up the signal section. Okay. Then I could right click my mouse and duplicate again. And then I could tee up target maps. Okay. Now notice in the signal that the loss of life is green now. Why? Well, because back on the AssetMap report, it's factoring in that new life insurance policy. So for the sake of this example, what I might actually choose to do in the beginning is right click my mouse, and I could actually select this proposed term life and actually click hide. Okay, hide does not delete it, it simply removes it from view. So I'm sharing with you some best practices here. Okay, I hid the policy here. If I click back into the signal, if I refresh my screen, it's going to update and bring my loss of life signal back to yellow. Okay, I always like to condense the menus on the left hand side. If you didn't know, you can drag and drop the target maps in a particular order. So here's how I might start. Mr. and Mrs. Client, Eddie, Katie, it's so great to see you. As you can see, this is the map that I have built for you. This is going to be the foundation of our relationship moving forward. I have the two of you in the middle and the most important people in your life up at the top. Now, based off of everything that you've shared with me, is there anything missing here? Not that you're aware of. Okay, perfect. Well, listen, part of our relationship is not only are we going to use this map as the foundation, but I'm also going to use a screening tool. This screening tool is called Signals. At the highest level, it just lets me know if there's potentially some areas we could be missing some information for, or perhaps we need to dive into deeper. You might notice some items here in green indicating that we may be on a decent track to success. We'll run the numbers no matter what. But you'll also notice some things in yellow and red, which are indicators that there could be a problem, or again, we're missing some information. Now, loss of life is one in particular I really wanted to talk to you about today, because I know that caring for your family is the most important thing. And so I actually took the liberty of running a loss of life analysis just to truly see the numbers of exactly what we'd want to solve for you based off of your current insurance. And Eddie, if I actually open this up, I want to share with you that we did find a pretty significant gap. So what I'm showing to you here is on the left-hand side, this is capital required. These would be the expenses that we'd be solving for in the event that you were to pass away today. You'll notice on the right, the only assumption I made here was using your life insurance policies that you currently have. Now, based off of this need and what we have available, we do have a pretty significant deficit here. And I wanted to make this a little bit more bite-sized. So I did break it out over the 15 years of income replacement that we would be solving for. So this $1 million also comes out to about $8,100 a month. What does that mean? Ultimately, what we're looking at here is, listen, if we take your insurance policies and the benefits that they would pay out, and we would invest at an average of 5% return, okay, against these expenses. We're 35% of the way there. This is our gap. This is our deficit, $1 million, okay? And that's what we need to solve. So ultimately, Eddie, if you pass away today, Katie, you would have to write us a check for $1 million, and we would need to invest it an average of 5% rate of return. Now that may be ridiculous, right? And that's perfectly fine. So we're not suggesting that you do that. But what we need to have a conversation about is, would you be able to self-fund this gap? If you couldn't write the check up front, would you be able to come up with $8,100 a month every month for the next 15 years of that income replacement? Yes or no? No? Okay, well, listen, the good thing is that I'm not going to just point out that there's a problem and give you no solution on how to fix it. We actually have some great policies, X, X, and X, that have a premium of X that you'd be paying, significantly less than $8,100 a month, okay, over time, with a death benefit that's going to care and take for your family. So let me show you what that looks like. I'm going to hop back here onto your asset map report. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you that I actually added a proposed term policy here. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and unhide it. I hid it for the time being because it's not something that's permanently part of your map, but I did add this. You'll notice I put the little yellow dot. It's just an indicator that this is a permanent placeholder ultimately, so I can show you this illustration. So by adding this proposed term life of $1 million death benefit, if I go back into your screening tool and I refresh my screen, you're going to notice that all of a sudden the loss of life goes green. And if you notice, if I click into the analysis, okay, I'll refresh my screen here as well. If I click into tab number 2, I'm going to check on to include that proposed term life. By clicking that proposed term life, you're now going to see that if we were to fill out that application and get that put into place, you would be 98% of the way there. And we could get all the way there if we even talk a little bit further about tab number 1. Is this $115,000 for emergency reserves? Like, do you feel like that's a little high? Like, what's your sleep at night number? Oh, it's actually less than that. You say about $50,000. Okay, great. Well, let me show you what that looks like. If I switch this to 50,000, I'll remove this language up at the top. I click update, and you're going to see that we get all the way there, 102% funded. Okay. And we can talk about other things as well. We can make some adjustments here if we need to. So there you go for everybody on the training today. I hope you can see that there is significant value there. One of the last things that I'd like to point out, again, we've talked about the household index list. You can use filters, you can use columns to mine for opportunities. But when you find a household that you want to dive into deeper, where I'd encourage you to uncover opportunities is to, of course, use signals and then back up the data using target maps. Okay. Now, listen, I use asset map every single day. So you might look at that and be like, whoa, that was awesome. I want to do that. Practice. Okay. If I can make any recommendation, like for example, when you have the different tabs teed up, you have to refresh the tabs browser if you make a change to the asset map report, right? If I had just added this proposed term life, unhid it, and came to the signals, it's not going to automatically update without me refreshing the browser. But as you get more and more comfortable, you can incorporate that language into your presentation. You can say, watch, I'm going to refresh my screen here. Okay. And if you're someone who's like, I don't really like the multiple tabs at the top, you don't have to do it that way. I could have stayed strictly in one tab, just like this. If I exit these out, okay, I could have stayed just on the asset map report, clicked into the signals icon, clicked into the target map, and clicked around this way if you prefer, okay? You can expand the menu if you like. I just personally recommend if you're live in front of clients, this can sometimes open a can of worms. They might want to ask what some of these different areas are. The good thing is that most of you should be able to point out and talk about those areas because they are relatively straightforward. But if you are new and you're just getting comfortable, I would encourage you to kind of keep this menu condensed during live presentations if you can. Now, we talked about household index lists for mining. We talked about the power of signals and target maps, okay? Let's also talk about the potential of you using stencils in part to help you uncover opportunities. Like, for example, prior to these people coming in for a meeting, if I saw that this signal was showing long-term disability as red, well, I could come onto the map and I could say, you know what, that kind of makes sense because there's no policy for her. There's no group policies through work. Maybe we're missing some information. What I could have done proactively before they came in is I could have right-clicked my mouse, click stencil, click apply stencil, okay? When it comes to stencils, you'll have my stencils, which are any stencils that you've pre-created on your own. So you created custom stencils or you've opted into some of our stencils to kind of create your own versions. or you'll have access to our public library. Okay, everybody has these two tabs. The public library has anywhere from 20 to 24, I can't remember the number, of fully built out stencils that we built alongside other financial professionals based off of niche markets. Some of this is based off of generation, some of it's based off of occupation. You can go through this list. If you're not familiar with stencils, I highly recommend you watch the recording of the webinar that I did last month, which was all about introducing our new asset map stencil library. So this is something recently new that we've enhanced into the platform, having this full list. So if after today you're like, you know what, I don't really fully understand how stencils work, again, that's not the primary focus of today's training. So I would encourage you to watch last month's training back. I'll show you where you can find it in a moment, okay? Specifically, when you want to apply stencils in part, if you're taking notes today, I recommend using the building block stencil. It is the best stencil to apply very specific pieces. So if you're taking notes, write down right now, BB stencil, building block stencil, okay? It's option number 2. With this particular stencil, when you select it, I choose to not apply it in full. So see where it says apply in full? I say no. When you pick no, that allows you to pick pieces of a stencil to apply it. Sometimes you can only select a member to apply the stencil to, but the building block stencil in particular allows you to select from the topics dropdown. Other stencils don't let you do that. It's just how we've kind of designed this, okay? So what I could do is I could look for disability policies and I could tie it to Katie, for example, and I click apply stencil. And instead of applying a huge stencil, I'm only going to apply placeholders specific to long-term disability to just Katie. And I might say, well, you know what? I want to apply the same ones to Eddie. Well, guess what? You just do the same exact steps. Right-click your mouse, click stencil, click apply stencil. You're going to go to the public library. You're going to pick option number 2. You're going to say, do you want to apply it in full? No. And this time, I'm going to look for long-term disability, okay? And I'm going to apply it to the primary client, in this case, Eddie. I click apply. Same 2 placeholders are going to be applied to his side. Now, he already told me his individual long-term disability. So I actually don't need this placeholder. So what I could do is I could just click into that stencil and I click delete. Okay, but I still wanted the placeholder for group long-term disability. Now, what about annuities? Maybe we want to have a conversation about additional guaranteed income. Okay, they already have annuities here, but like, just hear me out for the sake of the example. Again, I could right click my mouse. I click stencil. I click apply stencil. Go to the public library. I pick option number 2. I say, I don't want to apply it in full. And instead, I'm going to look for additional pieces here. Okay, so I could come in here and I could select from these different options. Okay, conversation, non-retirement accounts, for example, if I click that, let's say I want to apply it to Eddie, I click apply. When you pick non-retirement accounts, it's going to put a number of placeholders on his side, and you're going to see them here. Okay, so we put some placeholders. And the thing is, you might say, you know what, I actually didn't want these. How do I get rid of them? Well, you're not going to right click your mouse and click clear stencil, because if you do that, it's going to not only clear these 4 placeholders, but it's also going to clear these intentional ones that I do want. So instead, you're going to use your search and select tool on the upper right-hand side. And as a best practice, you're just going to select those 4 and you're going to just delete those 4. And by doing that, it allows you to keep the other pieces. Okay, so I'm trying to give you some best practices and some tips to really navigate through this in a really well thought out manner. If you don't want to use stencils, listen, you can also just use your action menu on the left, and you could just add in an annuity asset and put a dollar value and say, listen, I put this intentionally because I wanted to ask you about it. Are you aware of the benefits of having guaranteed income? Are you aware of this idea of the income, uncertainty roller coaster? Like, there's a reason why some people that have a lot of guaranteed income have less anxiety during retirement. Why? Because they're not as focused on how the market's performing, because not all of their money is invested in, retirement assets. Right? They have a good chunk of money that they're going to be able to have guaranteed. So just some different things to think about there. All right, we're going to stop there for today, but don't go anywhere because we still have some things we're going to talk about. First, I want to engage you all very briefly with a poll. Please do me a favor and let me know, do you love Asset Map in general? Like, if you're brand new, you've been with us for a while, if you're somebody who has been using our platform and you have enjoyed it, right? Or you're finding success, or you're excited to continue using it. I just want to know, like, do you love Asset Map? And more importantly, would you be willing to leave us an honest review? If the answer is yes, I'm going to post the link right in the chat. You can do it right now. I'm just going to ask that you leave us a Google review. If you click on the link that I just posted in the chat, it's going to populate to a page that's going to look just like this, okay? All you have to do is come here to the Google reviews, and then from there, you're going to be able to leave a review, okay? You can add 5 stars, add in the review, share with us what you love about Asset Map, but we'd love to hear from you. Thank you to those of you that said yes. Again, I just posted the link to allow you to do that quickly in the chat in Zoom. Now, in terms of some next steps, okay, what to count on. So after today's training, oopsies, let's go back to our situation here. Sorry. Okay. What are some next steps? Next steps are going to be the following. I want you to think about signing up for next month's Accelerate Series webinar. It hasn't been set up yet, but it will be, and we'll be doing some in-app messaging to help promote it. Okay. Next month's Accelerate Series webinar is going to be about the client portal, which is a brand new feature that we just released. Those of you that are on our enterprise clients, okay, we're likely in the final stages of getting that approved for you. So the intention is that it should be rolled out to hopefully everybody in the next week or so. So if you don't have access to the client portal yet, please do not panic. We're in the process of getting it approved. Okay, but that's going to be what our April's Accelerate series is going to be about. Those of you that said you're willing to leave us a review, please use the Google review link that I posted in the chat. Lastly, I want to encourage you that for some of you, if you're looking to invest in yourself and you really would like to take a deep dive in terms of Asset Map training, you might want to think about joining us for our Asset Map virtual bootcamp. This is an incredible training that we only offer once a quarter. Last quarter, it filled up so quickly, we ran out of seats for people because it's becoming very, very popular, okay? Our next event is coming up May 21st or 23rd. There's plenty of time between now and then to block your calendars. It's half-day sessions each day. You join remotely, okay? You could be on camera, off camera, but you join live so that you can interact, ask questions, network. Myself as a senior training manager, I take part in all 3 days. I help run boot camp alongside our customer onboarding advisor, okay, our senior customer onboarding advisor, Sean Dodds, and our CEO and founder, Adam Holt, takes part in our 201 session, which is advanced, okay? We did launch early bird pricing today, which is 35% off, but I do want to extend a little bit of an extra discount to all of you that actually tuned into today's session. So if you have interest in learning more, click on the link in the chat and you can use my code for 40% off your ticket, okay? Other than that, if you want to learn more, you can certainly reach out to us and I'd be happy to answer any questions. You can sign up for just day 1, which is our 101 session, or days 2 and 3, which is our 201, or combo, which is all 3 days. Okay, so lots of options there for you. The very last thing that I want to ask of you all today is, could you just take a moment and let me know what you thought of today's training? Was it valuable? Of course, you may have some case-specific questions. I totally understand that, and I'd love to answer that for you. So please reach out through our support channels to our team. But please know that there's 100+ people on this webinar. So obviously some questions we're not able to completely answer for the full group. If you don't want to scan the QR code, you can also just click on the link I just posted in the chat, but I'd love to hear from you. Other than that, if you have to jump, please feel free to do so, but I am going to take a moment to comb through the chat and see if there's any outstanding questions. How can I access the recording of this training? I'll need to watch through this again while I practice. 100%. The recording I'm going to email out to every single one of you probably within the next hour, if I had to guess. I just have to wait for the recording to render. So as soon as that's done, I have the emails all teed up. So I just need to get the recording in there and then I'll send it out to everybody. Okay. How do these calculations consider retirement long-term care? If it happens simultaneous? Great question. So specifically, if you're trying to take a look at retirement and layer in long-term care, I'll just be honest, we typically see that being done most often in a retirement target map, and you can layer in a long-term care expense. I actually have a really great support article that I can show you all. If you log into Asset Map and you click on the chat bubble here, again, you can find the knowledge base, which is the second option here. If you type in target map scenarios like this, I actually have created some small little training videos that cover a variety of ways to model certain things within target maps, and layering in a long-term care event during retirement is actually one of them. So that might be something that you have interest in checking out. Yeah, so in terms of the math for signals, right? So we have the predictive model built into the back end. They are based off of industry standards. We don't share the math. I'm not exactly, if you have specific questions about, like, I'm curious, like what goes into specifically like liquidity and things like that, or why is the liquidity red when this person actually has assets? A lot of times it is due to like earned income, for example, like if there's no current active earned income. But this is again why signals are not a perfect solve. But if you ever have questions like, why is this signal showing as green when I think it should be red, like, you can reach out to our team specifically and ask us that question, and we can give you a little bit more insight as to like what is included in that particular signal if you have questions. Okay, so hopefully that's helpful. Is there a presentation that goes over the client portal? Great question. So if you have access to the client portal right now, you can go into the knowledge base, search for help, and you can type in the keyword client portal. Okay, again, for those of you that are considered our enterprise clients, it's probably not rolled out to you yet, but will be rolled out in the next like week or two. So you can find some additional resources here that will include videos and or user guides. And again, we're going to be doing a live webinar next month in April for the client portal. So you can stay tuned for that as well. All right, let me see. Any final questions? Yeah, so for some of you that are on our enterprise clients, there are a couple of our enterprise clients where you may only see 5 signals. That's likely because there was a signal that your company determined that they wanted to turn off, okay? And likely for good reason. If it's not super applicable to the type of business and things that you're typically addressing, that will likely be why that's the case. So hopefully that answers your question. All right, everybody. Well, that's all I have for us today. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up and end our recording.